and beyond all the numbers and stats, man, being in the waiting room with a family and just watching, I'm getting choked up, watching them come out and be like, we got 2 kids. It's cool, man. It was cool.
Awesome, man.
And just living that moment with that family, and you go, beyond the job, this moment is so impactful.
Welcome back to another episode. This is a very, very special episode where we are not just doing any episode, but this is the conclusion of a journey that we have set out on almost a year ago to bring this crazy idea to life called the Rough Cut Club. And we are not ending the Rough Cut Club because I know it was sounding like that, but we are ending season 1 of the Rough Cut Club with this episode. So this is a very, very special episode here in the studio with my amazingly talented co-host, Mr. Shane Reitzammer. Shane, how are you today, my friend?
Great. I totally thought you were about to fire me on air because you were like, this is the conclusion.
This is the conclusion of Shane's time here with us.
Last show you'll ever do as my co-host.
That's right. Special announcement. No, buddy, we want to keep you here to stay. Couldn't do this without you. But man, it has been insane to look back on just the journey of taking this idea and bringing it to life. And then, almost 40 weeks later, something in that ballpark, like we have dropped an episode a day, a year. And it was like one day when we get to that point, and now it's like, we're at that point where we can look back and just, just reflect on the guests that we've had, the year that we've had. And it's that time of year where you can just refocus. And
well, let's go back even further than that though. Think about this. When did we first start talking about a podcast?
Years and years ago, man. It was not until last year that we actually did it, but it was years ago that we were like, dude, we should do this thing. And it's one of those things that's so easy not to do that you just don't do it. Now we're here, we're in the trenches, and it's been a beautiful journey to look back and do almost 40 episodes of a podcast.
Yeah, man. And so I'd say those are listening, thinking about starting their own podcast, just do it.
Just do it.
Take that first step. It's kind of like feature films, like we've heard from people. Do it. Take that first step. Get it done, because it does feel good, man. Looking back on almost 40 episodes, a lot of awesome guests, a lot of good conversations even me and you had early on, a lot of topics. I'm excited for season 2.
I know.
All the things that we can get into. I know you and I both have a lot of ideas how to elevate this podcast. And we want to hear from the listeners too. So if you have ideas or suggestions or topics, hit us, man. Hit us in DMs. Comment on this YouTube page or on the podcast where you're receiving this. We would love to hear from you and keep providing educational, informational, and just fun content for filmmakers.
Yeah, man. So as we get to, the end of the year, we want to take this episode to do a little bit, do something a little bit different than we have done before, where one, want to reflect just on our personal years that we've had just as creatives, as individuals, and then also look back and reflect on some of the guests that we've had on the show, because I don't know about you, but one of my favorite things just in hindsight is how many dope conversations that we've got to have with people that we never should have been in the same room with or on the same, phone call with, but because of this podcast, it's united us, and I've gotten to learn and grow more than, I feel like anyone just from doing this. And so wanted to take some time on this episode to dive into your year, into my year, and then, just some of the guests that we've had on here, man.
Dude, I don't know how this applies, but it's like the teacher learns more than the student. Not that we're teachers in this by any means, but like we've been able to we've learned so much on this because even though we're providing this podcast, it's an outlet for others to learn and hopefully enjoy the process of filmmaking and relate to other filmmakers. But I can't agree more. Like I've learned so much and I've related and connected with people that, we hadn't had met before or weren't in the same circles. And so I actually was on another podcast called the Vision Maker Podcast, and they asked me why we had started our podcast. And I had said, there's a lot of different things, a lot of different strategies, and we kind of went over that in that podcast. But one of the things was opening those doors, man, and just getting connected with people. And I think in the freelance world or in the production company world or even in corporate life, man, even though we feel more connected than ever, there's a lot of isolation. And I think podcast shows like this not only hopefully help our viewers and get involved and feel inspired, but us as well. We're not alone, guys. Like the stuff that we're all going through, whether it's the market demands, the market changes, the strikes, it affects us all in different ways. But there's similarities in there, and there's lessons to be taken from. So, man, thanks for helping us make this happen. This podcast, it's been awesome. But let's jump in, dude.
We got to jump in. So it's really easy as creatives, as entrepreneurs, as individuals to just keep going and going and going and burning out all engines. But it's important to take a time to look back, reflect on how far you've come. So Shane, I'm going to kick it off, bro. What is one thing that you are most proud of accomplishing this year?
Oh, that's a tough one. Well, I let me take that back. Parker, when you listen to this podcast later in life, you are the most the biggest accomplishment thing that I'm proud of. So my wife and I welcomed our second child into the world this year. Last year it was Kaya, and this year it was Parker. So my girls are my world, and it was such a huge. I want to say that's not. My wife did most of the work, so I don't know if that's my accomplishment. But we're raising a human being. But on a personal side, man, that has been the most fulfilling and gratifying thing that I'm thankful for from 2023.
That's awesome, man. I think that outside of filmmaking, I mean, one, I can't top yours. Like, you had a kid and you're a dad of 2 now. Like, mine doesn't even matter, but
no, it's all different. It's all different stories, though.
Totally.
And I'm curious to hear, maybe like what's on the personal side, but then also like on a career side for you too.
Yeah. So like, I think 2.5 years ago, I set out on a crazy big side quest that almost became the main quest. There was 2 full-time quests going on, but I bought a condemned house, or almost condemned house, with a guest house in the backyard. And I spent 2.5 years rebuilding both of those houses. And as of like a month ago, I just finished a 2.5 year long project. And that was like a major milestone for me, because it was like I was way more expensive than I thought it was going to be. I didn't have the resources to do it. I didn't have any experience at all, but like saw it through to the end and have completed it. And I think it's so easy to get shiny object syndrome when it's like you're in the middle of doing something that you set out to do, and then it'd be like, oh, there's these other things that like I really wanted to chase after, but I had to go tunnel vision on the thing that I set out to do initially. And so I think I'm super proud of just like finishing that project, because it was the biggest project I've ever taken on. I think inside of my film career, man, one of the episodes with Eric Thane, it really jumped out to me, but it was all about finding clarity as an artist, which is something that it's so easy to keep creating and doing the next thing and not have 100% clarity on what brings you fulfillment and happiness, and like the direction that you're going. Even if you're walking forward, are you going in the right direction? And so I think one of the things that I've been able to do this year, and I don't know that you ever fully arrive at that clarity because you're always recalibrating, but I've gotten much more clear and concise on the direction that I think I'm going in my career. And I think that beyond any project that any talent, any accomplishment of a specific video, I think just having clarity and that inner, peace and where you're walking is something that I'm most proud of accomplishing this year.
That's awesome, man. That's great. I think on the career side for me, I got to direct some really cool projects, and I got to get out of the, a lot of times I have to wear the business hat all the time. And so that's been a lot of fun. I mean, you and I have created some awesome commercials and documentary content together this year, and getting to like be creative again and actually like fully realizing like, okay, I'm going to fully commit to directing on this project instead of like producing, running a bunch of other projects, instead of like just siloing the time to be able to direct, was probably on the career side one of the best things looking back.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. Looking back, what do you think one of the biggest challenges were that you overcame?
Well, I mentioned having kids, so 2 under 2 is super hard.
Boom! Drop the mic. We're done there.
No, but no. I mean, it again, it's the best thing ever. It's awesome. It's a lot to juggle, but honestly, to be honest about this, the hardest thing is, I think it's a good thing. But it's hard because I look back and go, man, there's a lot of systems and processes that I've built, that we've built, that our team has built as a company, and we have outgrown them. And so going back and going, this is broken, we need to modify this, we need to tweak this. And so you just have to remember that you're always going to refine the process, and that can seem very tiring, like you're treading water, right? Yeah. And so just being really intentional with reviewing processes that are broken and going, all right, like, don't take it personally. Myself, right? Like, I go, this was a process, it was working, it should work, why is it not working? But instead going like, okay, how do I fix this? Yeah. And it's okay, it worked for a period of time, now we need to make something better. Yeah. So that was the biggest challenge. It's big. And I will say that it still is the challenge going into 2024. So but yeah, that's definitely bleeding over. That's so What about you, man? What's one of the biggest challenges you've experienced?
I think that for me, it was probably alchemy. So for those that are listening and don't know what alchemy is, I had this crazy dream really when I was a kid to start my own festival one day. And the older I've gotten, I've thought about it more and more. And then I was like, how could this actually even be possible? And it didn't really seem that possible, especially at this point in my life. And I had a couple of conversations with people about like starting super, 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 super small and just organizing an event for creatives in the Dallas area to kind of give back and to unify us together, because there's so many creatives here, but they're not unified. And wound up out of like happenstance, one of the people on our team had a conversation with a venue that was like, hey, we see your idea and we want to partner with you on this for free. And so we were blessed to have been given a venue partnership with Hickory Street Annex, which is one of the sickest venues in Dallas. And it's probably like a $8,000 a day venue or you know, whatever it is. And they gifted it to us for free. But they said, you have a timeline of 3 months to do this because we only have one date that we're going to give you. And so I had 3 months to, you know, assemble a micro team. But we wound up bringing a free event to almost 300 creatives in the Dallas community. And I got to have a skate park that was built for this, where we had a skate contest out front. Shout out to 4 Down and Alliance Skate Park, some of my hometown, you know, sponsors and support. And we had skateboarding there. We had, painters. We had 5 different musicians. There was food vendors there. There was just like clothing vendors, everything lined up outside. And it was like a dream come true for me. But it was also like one of the most challenging things that I've ever had to like lead in assembling in a 3-month time period with no budget. And we pulled it off, and it was awesome, man.
And we did debate calling it Joey Fest, just for the record.
Still on the table. It hadn't possibly.
Comment if you think 2024 should be called Joey Fest or Alchemy. But dude, I'm super proud of what you did. And we, man, I remember that was another one like this podcast. You came to me and we kind of talked about the idea. And, you know, okay, how does this play into the value for, you know, the community and for the company and all of that? And then, so it's funny because this was it was started as like, oh, it's going to be a photographer meetup. You guys go check out the link of what Joey and the team put together for Alchemy. Way bigger than just a photography meetup. We'll share the link to the video. Yeah. There's the Instagram page, and tons of artists came together and make it happen. I mean, everybody gave it their time. And that was really cool just to see the movement that you've created in the Dallas area that I hope we get to see more of in 2024. Yep. Hint, hint. We'll see.
Hint, cough,
TBD.
Cough, wink, wink.
Yeah.
I love it, man. Well, going past challenges, what do you think the craziest thing you saw this year was?
Craziest thing. you know, when we did our wedding episode, we had so many like wild and crazy stories of like, I'm not on set as much anymore. And so you don't get to see like that. But I'll tell you one story that this is insane. So we did, in January, we got contacted by one of our clients about a project. Actually, this is probably November, December of last year. And they told us about this project that they would like us to be a part of. No, it was only 30 days out. And they, you know, I was like, there's no way legal department's going to let us film this. And anyways, we got the opportunity to film the separation of conjoined twins, something that like in you know, there's a lot of conjoined twins, but like this case, only like one or two like a year ever happened. So very rare operation here happening in Dallas, Texas, Fort Worth, Texas, actually. And we got to assemble a team. We had to rush the edit. We flipped it in like 48 hours. We helped them put on a live stream press conference. And beyond all the numbers and stats, man, being in the waiting room with a family and just watching, I'm getting choked up. Watching them come out and be like, we got 2 kids. It's cool, man. It was cool.
Awesome, man.
And just living that moment with that family, and you go, beyond the job, this moment is so impactful. Yeah. Wow. Whew. Got to take a drink of water.
Dang,
there,
man.
Yeah. All right, Joey,
choked
beat
up.
that,
Who's
bro.
Cutting onions in the studio right now.
Yeah,
Dang,
but you can, if you want to see a little bit of that, you can go look that up on our site. But it's man, just getting to live those moments with people goes beyond the job.
Yeah. I think that's one of my favorite things about just doing this is all the different little life experiences that we get to be a fly on the wall for and like help capture the memory of and document, you know, like that's the heart of documentary filmmaking is like being there for those once in a lifetime moments and conversations and things that, you know, it's like your artistry and everything that you've learned is going to come together to really make something magical for people to look back and remember, or, you know, just learn about for years to come. And it's like the magic of what we do as documentary in documentary filmmaking. My story, I don't think is, you know, I'm still,
give me a laugh. I need a laugh,
well,
bro, after that one.
I'm still sad that I didn't get to be a part of this, because what Shane's not saying is that project got nominated for an Emmy and I was supposed to be on it, but I broke my wrist freaking snowboarding 2 days before and I couldn't even hold the dang camera. And now I'm not an Emmy nominated filmmaker, but Shane is.
I didn't tell you this, but when you were going on that trip, I don't know, this is like older brother syndrome or dad, whatever. I'm just like, Joey, why are you going snowboarding? Like, I'm anxious. No, he'll be fine. He'll be fine. Yep. Sure enough, bro, you break your wrist.
The last run of the last day.
My bro is out. And not only that project, we had, you know, of course, we got super busy right when you get back.
Totally.
And,
it was rough, but I think, man, I just did an event with Gary Vaynerchuk, which was sick. It's called Success Unleashed with one of our VIP clients, Mr. Brian McCauley. He's a G. And they had smoke cannons that were at the event, and I guess the team that had assembled them didn't think that they would go as far as they would, and they actually went right into the ceiling of this massive, like probably multi-$100,000 chandelier, and the smoke actually caused one of like the crystals to like break. And so glass fell from the ceiling of this stage onto like the MC's face.
Oh my gosh.
As he was welcoming Gary Vee up, and he had like blood all over his face from glass, like literally falling from a chandelier from smoke cannons. And he's like bleeding, trying to welcome Gary up to the stage. And it was gnarly, man.
That's crazy.
Could have lost an eye very
Dangers
easily.
of the job. Yeah, that is. Oof.
Yeah, so not twins being separated, but got to witness a little bit of blood. Maybe not as much as you.
Oh, that's rough. Well, I'm glad they're all right, but that is pretty gnarly.
I know. So, man, it's great to look back at the previous year, but looking ahead to next year, what is something that you hope to accomplish in 2024?
Fixing those systems and processes, expanding the company, providing a better service and experience for our clients. Just continuing to level up what we do, but also find time to create, like I said at the very beginning, like getting to direct, right? Getting to do those things, whether they're passion projects or just really, great clients that trust us with the entire vision of the project. Man, that's some of the stuff that I really want to focus on in 2024. Buying back time too is huge, I think.
Got those 2 kids now, man.
Man, yeah, and they need time, and
right.
Dad wants to give them time. So I think finding ways to make sure that things, operate and run efficiently, and the experience goes great, and then making sure that I appropriate enough time and energy into every area of my life.
It's good, man. I think I was actually wrestling with this question before I got here and just thinking about goals for next year. And while I think that I got clarity on my goals for this next year, and like, yeah, I have some, like I'd love to shoot a feature film, which is cool and whatnot. And I actually have some opportunities lined up to do that, and that may, come to pass. I've also had a handful of them fall out, and, that happens. But I think this year is, and I don't know if I'm not happy about it or if I think I'm at peace with it, but this year isn't a massive goal milestone year for me. I think I just came out of so much of that this is kind of a maintaining year for me, and building out what I have worked to grow. I want to sustain it this year, and it's kind of like a maintaining year. And so while I want to do some of these big projects and whatnot, I think that this year is really about maintaining and sustaining the what I sowed into the previous years. And I think you and I are doing some cool things with the company right now, and there's some cool stuff happening in our careers that it's like, yeah, this is great. This documentary is huge, this feature film, whatever. But I think that, in my personal and professional life, this is kind of a year to really maintain what was, sowed into the previous years, and then really get prepared for more of an ambitious goal year the next year. I think there's less like ambition riding on, I have to get to the top of the mountain this year. I think, whatever the quote is about, like, if you have 6 hours to cut down a tree, you spend the first 4 sharpening your axe. This year feels like a sharpening the axe year for me, not a cut down the tree year.
Nice. So. That's good, man. That's good perspective. It's hard too, especially having that hustle mentality of freelancers or filmmakers. We always want to, what's the next big thing? What's the next big thing?
Yeah.
And it's good to be able to live in the moments and being able to enjoy, like you said, what you've already kind of sowed, a reaping season.
And I feel like it's a preparation season, like I feel like there will be a very big opportunity come, this year that I don't even know is coming, that it's like, oh, because I spent the first 4 or 5 months of the year getting prepared for this opportunity, I'm ready for it. And so something may happen that, isn't on my radar even right now. Like, how many things do you look back on in the year and you're like, oh, I didn't even know I was going to get to go to this country, or I didn't know I was going to get to work on this project. I didn't know I was going to do my first virtual production, or my first, work with this celebrity or whatever. Like, the stuff just happens. But when you get prepared for it in advance, whether that be from a talent standpoint, freeing up your time to be available for a certain project, financially being ready for an investment, like whatever it is, they're going to come your way and you're going to be prepared. And so right now I'm in preparation mode for the next thing.
Life in the prep mode.
Life in the prep mode, man. I love it. Well, man, I want to transition to really this podcast, and just looking back on some of the guests that we've had on the podcast. We have had some really, really spectacular conversations with some amazing human beings that are super talented, doing incredible things in the world. And I think that some of those conversations have really been impactful for me. I know they have been, for both of us, really. And so just looking back at some of the episodes that we have done, do you feel like there is a guest that maybe you identified with that you weren't expecting to, or just identifying with them kind of impacted you and just your creative business?
So, like, I guess who I identified the most with, connected with. Yeah, man, so many. I feel like that's the great thing about the podcast is that, you know, I can see little bits of me or you or us in every guest that we interview. And I think that's the great thing. That's the point of this podcast is that the similarities that we can take away from their stories or our stories that can improve us, each other, or the listeners. I think I relate most. It's, you know, we joke about it when a DP comes on. I'm like, cool. You're asking all the questions. I'm gonna. If they talk about business at all, I'm gonna be like, you know, jump in.
Yeah.
I want to say like people like Micah, people like Wes, even Tammy. You know, people that have production companies of some type that have kind of maybe struggled at times with that identity of like doing the creative, but then having to do the business, you know, like I really relate to that. And I really connect on that because we all have that shared struggle. And we've had several guests where afterwards you and I talk, and we're like, dude, we're all going through that exact same thing as a company or as an artist, you know? And so I think a lot of times I hear that from the business perspective, even, you know, how people pitch and sell clients, you know, I take away some of that stuff and go, dude, like I have that same struggle, or like, wow, that guy, I've been trying to say that same thing, but that dude said it way better.
Yep.
I'm going to borrow a little bit of that and put it in my sauce and make my recipe. And so, you know, it's been great, but I feel like those people that kind of, you know, have those production companies and kind of have to balance, always trying to balance, I think. And that's what I can really relate to. In fact, I took Micah and I went out and had a lunch and talked about, you know, just business and shop. He has a production company here in Dallas, and we're just talking about, you know, the challenges and like the successes and like, hey, what do you do on this, you know? And so it's great to be able to chop it up like that on the business side, and just have those shared experiences for sure. What about you, man?
I think it's been interesting seeing how similar a lot of us are at the end of the day. And like, you think that some of these people that are out here doing these, you know, insane projects are so much different than you, and they're not. A lot of us are wired the same way. Like you said, we have the same struggles in business with clients, with, you know, identity, your craft, you know, all of it. And so I think it's been really cool to, like you said, identify a little bit with each of the guests that we have on the show, and pull things away. But man, I really enjoyed, I think, Mac's first episode.
The reason I built this car was to get around a track and actually film true to life, fast content instead of relying on CGI. So, I mean, we've taken the car 155 with a smaller like black arm rig off the back, and we've done over 110 with the arm on the car, which is nuts because like the second you move it, the whole car moves over. So as a driver, you have a lot going on that you gotta maintain.
He, you know, went to UNT. We grew up skateboarding. A lot of the guests that we've had on the show have like had, you know, an action sports background to some degree, which I resonate with. And, you know, just seeing like the transitions from him to a DP, and then from DP to focusing on the agency, and then doing the, you know, the camera car, and really niching down on like what he loves to do, and then like taking a huge risk, and then, you know, seeing that investment through and making it profitable and something that like he takes what he loves every single day and is like, I'm going to go do that and I'm going to make it cool. And I'm like, man, that's so tight. And so like at the same time, like being inspired a little bit by each of the guests that we've had on here has been cool. And then of course, like, you know, all of the DPs, it's super interesting to hear, you know, just, you know, talk shop with them and go like, oh man, it's super cool how you approach this project, how you prep for this project, how you know, bring your creative vision to this project. And it's like, you know, it's been cool to just know that like we're all on our way, I guess, at the end of the day. So.
Yeah, goes back to that recipe thing. I feel like everybody bakes the cake a little different, and we all have our unique flavor to it. I've been loving watching just you and other DPs chop it up and talk about prep and process and like.
Well, and even that is challenging. It challenges your process and how you you know, tackle something that you're setting out to do. And so I've even seen my process change with us when we go on set because of the conversations that have been had on the show.
Absolutely. Speaking of challenges, what episode, what filmmaker or person we've had on the show challenge you the most in your approach to filmmaking?
I would say probably Kevin Garrison. Honestly, he was a recent episode that we had, but he was a DP that is doing this really insane project right now called Nomad.
Biggest project that we've been doing is called Nomad. The film itself is shot in 31 countries and all 7 continents, which is the most countries and most continents of any narrative film ever in history. Without spoiling the story for everybody, it is essentially a story of a young man that wakes up in a different place on Earth every day. And has a lot of those documentary like aspects in terms of how the film was made. We shot the entire film without any cinema lights. There's no CGI. And there's no sets. It's all real places. So it's a pretty wild experience. And that's been the last 4 years of my life or so.
And the whole premise of it is to shoot the whole thing with no lights, with very minimal crew, in all real locations, with no special effects. And I'm like, man, when you think about a feature film, he stripped away everything that we as DPs think that we need a lot of times to create something beautiful. And especially like lighting, man. Like, you know, I would never think to go and do a feature film without extra lights, but just that challenge in, you know, using the light that is available to you and the tools that anybody has. Like he was talking about using a white t-shirt and standing closer to talent to bounce natural light off to, you know, spill onto their face. And it's like the minutia of like detail to create beauty with the tools that we have. And even just like seeing like how he went out for days and days and days to track the shadow of the eclipse that was on the ground, so that when the eclipse was there, he could be in the perfect position to save time, to get the right angle. I'm like, man, that is like dedication that I see, that I'm like, my challenge or my process could be improved, and my craft, I can hone it better by, you know, putting the time into just thinking differently and prepping differently. And I think that Kevin's episode was super inspiring for me to, at the end of the day, step it up, you know, and really think about approaching my craft differently. And I think that at the end of the day, like, you're able to take all these conversations from different DPs like Michael Bradley and Andrew Barrera and, you know, Abe Martinez, and like see how they've done some of the bigger projects that they've done, and adopt a little piece of that into what I do, and then do my craft better.
I just thought about how fast we would move on a set if you had 0 lights. I'm like, dude, we could get off like 20 shots a day.
I know.
An hour. We could get 20 shots an hour, bro. We'd be going so fast. But challenge accepted. But see, next project.
At the end of the day, you know what it did? While that concept is great for that specific project, right, it almost makes you just rework the concepts that you're coming up with altogether. And so it stretches your mind a little bit on what's possible and the concepts to even tackle. Like maybe you go the opposite direction, right? Maybe you just do a project where it's like every shot you only have one light. And it's like, okay, well now this is a new way that I'm going to stretch my mind. Like I only have a key light or a backlight or, you know, a background light or whatever it is. Like
it's the challenge.
It's the
itself.
box. Yeah. It's like building a box for you to work in as an artist is kind of the fun, you know, like I think back of why I even like being a DP, and it's because I love problem solving at the end of the day. Like I love, you know, someone coming up to me and saying, we got 45 minutes, you should have had 2 days, and you know, you have one AC, but you should have had an army. And it's like, okay, well, like this is the challenge. I'm in the box. What can I do in this box to exceed expectations and to make beautiful art? And that's why I love being a DP. It's the challenge and problem solving.
Well, and I think that makes you grow too, right?
Yeah.
And I think for him, you know, and for you, it's like if you challenge yourself like that, you're going to find out unlock new gifts, unlock new talents that you didn't know you had. And then you're going to be able to take that and put that onto the next thing. Man, for me, when we had Adam Drake on the show, I worked with him on Washington's Armor way back when I was doing some camera and gimbal work, and early on in the Washington's Armor series. And I was just blown away by this dude as the first AD on set.
I mean, in prep, you are constantly working, and there's like always something to work on and try to. You're always behind. Every production I've ever been on, it's like, oh, I wish we could push a week. I wish we could push 1 week. Like, we're not gonna be ready in time. It just feels like that every time. So there's not a whole lot of free time. But what I like to do is, when we're at the end of the day, is go out to dinner with the DP, spend time with him outside of that, or even while we're there, just asking questions about them personally. Again, the same thing I would handle other crew on set. But the more I know them personally, the more I like people too, and I like to try to read people. And so the more I learn about them, the better I can read them. And then I kind of know, like in the situation of like on set, if I'm nagging too much, I can tell when he's frustrated with me, when he or she's frustrated, because I know them a little bit better now. Instead of them saying, "Hey, I'm frustrated with you," I can just see it and sense it and I stop, or because I've built a relationship with them. The next thing I do, the other thing is that I think a lot of AEDs kind of miss the ball on, is paying attention to how they work. Like, so once we start filming, like, Akis is the perfect example, who's the DP of The Chosen. I've been seeing him work for 4 or 5 years now. And I talked to Mitch, who's my second, who I'm also teaching a lot of times to first, like, so I can step away and he can run it, and what to look for. And I've been doing it with the keys for so long that I don't ever ask him for estimates. I almost never ask him, how long are you going to be? When are you going to be ready? I can just watch, and I can tell when he gets to that tweaking mode, and I know he's within 5 minutes.
Because he created this atmosphere of like community, everybody. I felt like he would come over and talk to me and ask me about not only just work, but like, my life, my family, like what's my ambitions and goals and all this stuff. And then we finally got him on the podcast because I think he's a great human being. He works on he's been the first AD on The Chosen and a bunch of films. And now as I direct more stuff, I'm like, man, he is a great example of a great AD, right? And so what I've taken from that, when we had him on the show, he kind of reminded me about how important relationships are and about how you have to make time for them as well and be truly, genuinely like interested, right? There is, we're all in this together. And like, I do truly care about our crew members and our client. When we get in that fast-paced speed process, sometimes it's execution. And I go, man, at the end of the day, we're all human beings. We all have families or lives, or we have history, we have futures. And so just for me, a goal and a challenge that I'm setting is to be invested more in each individual in the process instead of the overall process all the time. I think there's a balance because you got to get things done. And that's what Adam is so good about, being an AD that can not only balance getting it done, but done with a community and a relationship feel that is truly organic and authentic. And so I'm going to remember to do that on the sets moving forward. And just in general, man, it's a good practice. It's how we started the company. And sometimes when the wheels start going fast, you feel like you're barely holding on to the train. And so you got to slow down and make sure that everybody on that train is headed in the same direction.
Yeah. Adam's episode is definitely one that you want to go back to and just listen to, like, every few months, to just like get that refresher where it's like, man, like it's so easy to get lost in. And I think his episode is a really great way to just recalibrate what's important when you go on set. So
yeah.
What do you think the most impactful guest that we had on this podcast was for you?
Every single one.
Right.
Dude, I see, like, I mean, you nailed it earlier when you're like, I've taken away a little piece from everybody, and I have applied it in my sets, in my business, and everything. It's awesome, man. Like, going back to the beginning, like we have benefited more than anybody. And, we started out like, we want to do this for the community, and really it's like been amazing for us. So everyone, start your own podcast. Right? It's fantastic. You will learn so much. We've learned so much. Been blessed. Man, I go back. I've had to pick one. I remember we went to Barton. We did Barton's episode at his studio.
A lot of what we're doing is telling stories behind a product. And so we've received certain products and we'll get them and we're like, man, this thing's so corny. Like, this thing is awful. Well, let's come up with something cool for this.
Yeah.
But by the end of it, we're all kind of looking around and we're like, oh, this is actually kind of a cool thing, isn't it? Like, and so we were starting to see like the power of the storytelling that we're doing through the visuals. And it was like, oh, you start to realize like, that's why they hire us. Because when I was just a solo artist, it was like, oh, cool, people like my artwork. They're hiring me for my artwork. And that's all you don't think of it as a business model. It's just kind of like, oh, people are willing to pay me to create this cool digital artwork or this little 3D animated spot. And then over time, it shifts into like, okay, why do people pay me to do this again? And then you start to figure out like, that's why. And it's like, because I took this product that we all thought was kind of lame, and by the time we developed this full campaign for it, we're able to give a perspective to a consumer that they wouldn't necessarily see if it's just sitting on a shelf in a store or whatever.
Yeah.
And that was cool for multiple reasons, impactful for me, because I looked at Barton, and this guy, he's probably 10 years ahead of me in like having a company and a studio. Like he's on his 4th studio. They built it out. It's absolutely beautiful. Go check out the episode. Like it looks like a place you want to hang out at. It doesn't look like work, right? It was like, dude, can I just come back here and sit on the couch and drink coffee and hang out with you guys? This seems like a awesome place, right? So not only was I like awestruck with like the culture and just the community that he's created for his business, but he had said a few things that really resonated, and one of them was, he talked about, a lot of people think if you do a project, you either do it for your rate or you don't do it at all. And he said he doesn't believe in that. And he says, if somebody gives him an inch, he's going to take a mile. And so, even if you're doing it for a rate that you didn't want to, he's going to overperform, overcreate, because that secures the next project for you. And I know you and I have done that several times for our clients. Like we always want to go above and beyond and create it because it's always about the next, client, while we're keeping our clients happy in that budget range, right? But you're catching the next level, the next ride of budget. And so that was really cool to see somebody who's really established to say that, hey, it's okay to do the spec work. It's okay to do stuff not at your full rate. Just don't do it half-hearted. Do it full, do it over, give more than you're getting, right? And it's going to pay out big dividends, and it has. We've seen it. And so that was just reassurance because, we invest a lot of our time and our team's time and stuff that we go, is this going to ever pay back? Even spec shoots, we have the most fun on those. But if you go, is this a good investment of our time and energy? And then I got to do one more. The other thing too was he had mentioned about, he was like trying to figure out, he's like, he reached a point, they're creating really dope, VFX stuff. Their stuff's amazing, man. Like you watch their stuff on IG and they're working with the top clients. Yeah. They're creating amazing stuff. But he goes, why are people hiring us? And he got to the root of it is because they tell stories more than, it's not about the visuals and the high end, it's about creating a story that gets people engaged with that product. So take a boring, a pen, and he's created a story that then gets you so involved into that pen that people want to buy that pen, right? Yeah. And so really attaching the storytelling to their artwork, and that's why people hire them. And so I think you and I just talked about this before this episode, and I was talking about, I had to really think about like cinema story. Is it about the cinematography? Is it the storytelling? And I started kind of going back and listening to clients and reviewing what clients have said, and it always came down to the experience. And so that was a big eye-opener for me, and going, we have to keep providing an experience above everything else, because that is what people are buying from us. It's not the cinematography. It's not the storytelling. It's not even the strategy. I mean, they are buying all of that. That's good. But the experience is why they keep coming back, or they tell their friends about us. And so that's huge. I think people should do a self-audit and go like, why are people hiring me, right? As a freelancer or as a production company, like what is really, not what you think it is, what are your clients saying it is? Yep. And then you got to listen to that and then go, how can I make sure that always stays top and front so I can continue to have that client experience?
Man, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Barton is one of those dudes that what was so cool about his episode before we leave it is like he was a dude who grew up in the exact like same neighborhoods that I did. Like he was skating in the same places. He was, always around. And though we weren't like super close at the time, like he's a dude that we grew up in the same backyard. like really, really ran in the same circles, ran with the same people. And to see what he's built, like is like one of the people that grew up around you and like made it out, and to see what they made of themselves is like super tight, man. Like, you know, he, in my mind, like I think about Post Malone, right? And I'm like, he's the dude that grew up in the same school district that I did. He was like 1 year away from me, but like that's the hometown hero. You know what I mean? Because he made, like, he climbed to the top, and it's always so cool when like someone from your hometown like really can break out and make something of themselves, that you walk into his studio and you're inspired. And it's like, it's even different seeing like that dude who used to be at the same skate contests as me, and like riding the same parks, like go and build something. And it just proves that you can do whatever you set your mind out to. And so I think like every time that I see some like the projects and like the space and like walk in, it was like, that was an inspiring episode for me. Aside from the content, like that's a hometown hero from where I grew up, paving new ground. And so his episode was definitely one of my favorites for sure.
Let's go, Barton. ABC.
Shout
man.
out
That's
ABC.
awesome.
Already been chewed. That's right. Man, another dude who I think really made a big impact on me was Eric Thane's episode, man.
So one thing that I think creators really need that they don't ever get enough of is what I call creative space. And what creative space is well, it can take a lot of different forms, but I think for a lot of people, and in a lot of cases, it means you're spending a lot of time doing nothing. And this is something that most creators don't get enough of, right? We're always like, it's always on to the next shoot. It's on to the next thing, building the next business, launching the next product, like doing the next offer, shooting the next podcast. Like it's just from thing to thing to thing to thing. And honestly, people in today's world are addicted to just being productive, addicted to getting stuff done, addicted to being entertained, to not having quiet, uninterrupted time. To just like, literally people ask me like, what do you do during that time? I'm like, nothing. Just sit there. Just sit, think, breathe, meditate, like whatever it is. It's really a lost art in our world today because think about it, we're so addicted to dopamine, and like we have tablets and phones and watches, and we have we've got YouTube and social media and all this stuff, and we've just learned to just constantly be inundated with dopamine, inundated with entertainment and value and all those kind of things. It's the reason why we wake up in the morning, we grab our phones, we look at it, we get up, we go shower, we go to work, we finish work, we go watch Netflix, and then we go back to bed again. Like we don't want any time, any gaps between those things, because if we feel those gaps, what happens is in those gaps is that we feel what we call bored, right? But what is boredom? What is boredom really? Boredom is a physiological manifestation of some inner trauma, inner pain. And without going too deep into that rabbit hole and like where that comes from, you think about it, like it's uncomfortable to sit still and not do anything. Your brain probably goes a million different directions. Like I should be doing this. I need to do this. And like I could watch this. And I want to look at my phone. I want to pull it up and I want to check my notifications, or I want to like all that kind of stuff. It's our brains trying to distract us, is trying to find that drug to cover up the pain. It's just like if you took drugs for a depression or whatever, like you become addicted to that drug because it makes you feel happy. But is it real happiness? Is it real joy? No, it's just a Band-Aid over top of it. And so I think that like one of the skills that creatives really need to develop if they want to really truly become a creator, really truly go to the deepest levels of their creativity, is the skill of being bored. It's learning how to be bored and learning to become okay with being bored.
He, I talked about it a little bit earlier on in the episode, but I was actually going through one of the things that he was talking about, like as we did his episode, but it's like finding clarity as an artist and where you're going and like the things that bring you happiness and fulfillment. And I think that, he talked about giving yourself creative space to sit back and focus on the skill of being bored and to be okay with that, and like the meditation of it, because some of the best creative outlets that you're ever going to produce come from the moments when you just give yourself time to meditate, be bored, and really get clarity on where you're going as an artist. And so I think Eric's episode was one of the most impactful episodes for me personally in the journey.
Man, talking about getting emotional during episodes, I had to like look over at you a couple of times because I felt like, you know, you were kind of going through some of that.
Yeah.
And man, it spoke to me too, dude. I think that wisdom of just slowing down and stopping, because we do get to that space of there's no pause, you know, but you have to remember to pause and create that space. So yeah, I mean, I can't agree more. That episode, dude, if y'all haven't listened to that, go watch the Eric Thane episode. It's great.
Yep. I think when I think back to some of the bigger takeaways this year, I think another big person that comes to mind is Jay Holben.
To be a good director, you have to be a good storyteller. And that's what it comes down to. You have to engage an audience on an emotional and visceral level with the story that you want to tell. And that comes down to the director and the director's vision. A director has to be a singular voice. And the job is to bring together all of these other extraordinary artists who do their jobs beyond a level that you can as a director. And you bring them in and you herd them into a singular vision, so they're all bringing their best to tell that one story. And that's what the director does, whether it's the actors, the production designer, the cinematographer, the editor, the composer, the visual effects artist, who, no matter who it is, you're honing them all in to a single vision to tell a story.
Gosh.
And
Jay Holben, one super cool milestone to just have someone who is an associate ASC member, you know, even bless us with their time on this podcast, because to get to that level, it means that you have done some really, really amazing things in the world of cinematography. And he has been a pioneer, you know, for people like us to do what we're doing today and to be as inventive as he has and everything. And you know, one of the things that was really cool from his episode was to see how much his career had shifted throughout the course of, you know, his entire filmmaking journey. And then to just, you know, to take away that it's okay for your creative identity to change and evolve. Because I think it's so easy to get caught up in going like, I'm a director, or I'm a producer, or I'm a DP, or I'm a, you know, whatever it is. And then when you start having these shifts in life, whether they're, you know, having kids, whether they are, you know, your passion changing, just tragedy happening, whatever it is, it's like these little micro shifts happen, or you just lose interest, like you just lose passion, whatever it is. But I think like the big takeaway from him was like the shift in your identity and changing direction is okay. And a lot of times it's super scary, but if you see that through and you just like embrace it for what it is, you can really have a more fulfilling creative career, just, you know, accepting it.
Yeah, man, that talking about the guest, I feel like that that was an intimidating interview, man. And he was super nice, super great guy. But I remember getting on that one, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is huge. And I'm so thankful we had the opportunity to break bread with him over a podcast and talk. And he did leave some powerful, impactful moments. And I think one of the another big takeaway for me from this season was several people. Man, I feel like one of the biggest questions you hear is, how do you get into feature films? How do you break in? Right? Like everybody wants to know. And I feel like there's a lot of different answers, and, you know, it seems like there's 3 or 4 ways to do it, right? And from distribution to, you know, just making all that stuff. But we've had several people on the podcast talk about their feature film journeys, whether it was, you know, high-end studio to like ultra low budget feature films. And then we had the Dallas Film Commissioner on the podcast.
You know, a feature's hard, right? I mean, it takes a lot longer to shoot. It takes longer to edit. You know, you've got to do all the post-production work on it. You know, you're locking yourself up for 6 months or 9 months or a year, however long it takes you to complete that project, where, you know, you can knock a short film out in a month or a couple months, or depending on what you're doing. But what you get in return, you know, when I did my my feature that was $6,000, you know, after I finished that film, people were like, "Oh, you made a feature?" They didn't ask, can I see this awful $6,000 feature film that you made? They just knew that I had completed and actually finished it. And that is just a small miracle in and of itself. And then so people started asking me like, "Hey, will you help me produce this film? Will you work on this project with me?" So it opens all those doors of people knowing that you made a feature and then wanting to partner with you and do it. And there are ways to do it. People are like, "Well, I can't take 3 weeks off of work to go shoot a feature film." Well, the way we did this one is we would shoot Saturday and Sunday only. And so Monday through Friday, essentially working regular jobs and also doing pre-production. So you're doing 5 days of pre-production, then you shoot for 2 days. Then you do 5 days of pre-production, then you shoot for 2 days. So if you're willing to give up, 2 or 3 months of your weekends to shoot your feature, you can just shoot it every single weekend.
And he talked about, he kind of, summed up a lot of what other people have been saying, but he said, just go complete one. Because he said, and this was a big takeaway for me, if a distributor or a funder is going to look at your IMDb, let's just say, and you have 30 short films, but 0 features, but this other person has 1 feature and 0 short films, they're going to hire that person with a feature every time.
Yeah.
Because it's about, they say that guy can finish or that girl can finish, right? They can complete it. And so he was like, just go complete one. Do the open water. Oh, you remember that movie? Do the open waters method. Shoot on the weekends. Get your buddies in your spare time. Go shoot a couple of pages and then shoot it over the course of a year. Just finish the feature film so that you can say, oh, yeah, I'm capable of making a feature. So that was a huge takeaway. I know it's been on just like the podcast, the Alchemy event, a lot of things, the feature film created by us, by our Cinema Story team, has been on our list of things to do. And so that's going to be a big goal for us in 2024, 2025, as we reach our 3-year vision plan for it, as we reach the end of it.
Yeah.
And we got a lot of work to do, but it's kind of like one of those things like you can't hesitate anymore. You just have to do it. It's not going to be perfect. It's going to be dirty. It's going to be messy.
Yeah.
But you just need to get it done. So, yeah, that's a big takeaway. Kick in the butt. Let's go. Let's get it started.
Man, I love it, dude. Just looking back at the year that we've had and all the guests that we've had on, this is film school. The Rough Cut Club is film school, man. Like, there's so many takeaways that even now it's like these are people with years and years of experience that when you hear a soundbite, oh, just keep going. And it's like, nah, bro, if you take that for what it is, it's like somebody has really had to keep going or somebody has really had to do X, Y, Z. And if you don't, take it with a grain of salt, if you will, but this is years of experience that's boiling down something into, short sound bites. But I have felt like I've gone back to film school through this podcast. And so, hopefully the listeners have taken something away from it that's helped elevate their career and their craft as well. And we just want to say thank you, man, to all the guests that came out this year to spend time building this podcast and this community. And then to all the listeners as well who have, made this possible and have supported us in the process and sent us DMs of oh, thank you. Oh, this was cool. That is, it's encouraging to get those messages to just keep on continuing to do this because it's a lot of work. While podcasting is super fun, it is a lot of work. And so thank you guys for the support throughout the journey, man.
It is, man. And yeah, anybody watching that, has questions or, man, we want to hear who we should have on the show next.
Yep.
We've got a list of guests already scheduled and signed up for season 2. We've got an outreach list that we're working on for season 2, but who have we not interviewed that you want us to reach out? Who should we get connected to? Maybe you're watching this and you want to be on the show. Connect with us, submit the form. Let's get connected. And man, we want to create a community for filmmakers. So this show is more about y'all, even though, like I said, Joey and I are benefiting very much from going back to film school in this podcast. We want to keep providing content that you're excited about and want to watch.
Yep.
With that being said, man, I got to know, 2024, let's just say this.
We got to put it out there.
Who is who's your dream person that you would want to interview on this show?
I think that honestly, it would be so sick to interview Greg Frazier on the podcast. I'm putting it out there. I'm going to give 3 actually. I'm going to do Greg Frazier because iconic DP. I gotta pick his brain for hours. I think this is going to happen. I'm going to speak it into existence because I think it's going to happen, but I definitely want to interview Jacob Owens on the pod this year. I've already been in talks with him. It's going to happen. We got his business partner coming in season 2, and I'm already putting it out there. Both of those conversations are going to be amazing because both of those people have definitely made a big impact in my career. And then I just had the third one and I blanked. Who was the third one?
The third one you're probably going to say mine, which is Devin Graham.
Mm.
Devin Supertramp, man, I think is mine. So we're gonna have to shoot him a little piece because, man, when I was growing up in the film world, I was watching. I mean, I was already filming before that. I don't know when Devin started. He probably started before me, but I remember when I wanted to start getting good.
Yeah,
I watched Devin's
and his
a G, stuff, man, and Glide Cam, and it just. I was inspired. I learned. It was education. He gave back because not only did he create really cool content, but he did all that BTS stuff and all the little like helpful things. And so I think the community that he created at that time was really, really dope. And I'd love to hear, his perspective on things. I know he's gone through a lot of different times in his career. Oh, you thought of your third.
My third one. Casey Neistat. We're speaking it into existence right now.
There you go.
Casey, if you ever see this, I got to meet you one time in college in like a super small group of people. And it was like back when I was just getting started. I hadn't even become a freelancer yet. And to like actually have him as a guest in our house, would be a very full circle experience for me because he's inspired me a lot through just how he's approached filmmaking and, everything that he's given to the filmmaking community. Casey's definitely a bucket list guest for the show for sure.
I love it, man. Awesome, dude. Before we go, I gotta say, dude, I'm such a name like origin geek. I love like all the people that we've had on this show, hearing about how the meaning behind Already Been Chewed, all of these things. And do you remember the Wes Myers podcast?
Yep.
On the farm, it was a 1967 Minneapolis Moline tractor, and it was just our workhorse out there. And so it's a big tractor. The back tires are about 6 feet tall. We had a big 15-foot batwing mower, hydraulic mower, so it lays out like this. And so that's what we would use to move hay bales, drag trailers, tear down fences, just whatever. This thing could just run over trees. And so my brother went to college. I went to college. I have a sister. She's about 7 years younger. She did not do outside chores. So my parents were like, oh, no, all the help is gone. And so they immediately sold all the livestock, and that was it. And so my first summer back from school, the farm looks like it's 50 years older. Like the grass is overgrown. I mean, everything's just like in disarray. And so my mom's like, oh, great, you're home. She's like, good. So I want you to get on the tractor, and I want you to go mow the back 40 acres. And the grass is dead. It's like this tall. And she goes, but she's like, don't run the tractor out of diesel. It has a crack in the diesel tank.
Oof.
And I was like, okay. And I mean, this is 1963. The gas gauge goes like this anyways. Like you don't know what you got in the tank. And so I'm out there and I'm mowing, and I don't have a phone or anything. And I'm just like, man, I was like, it is hot. I was like, it is hot. And I look down, flames are just coming out of this thing.
Oh my!
And I'm like, oh shit. So I turn it off. All I have is a Gatorade bottle. And so like I run up and I'm like, and it's like, it just like goes up. And so I'm like, I'm about to burn this pasture down. I'm going to burn the neighbor's pasture down. This is about to be a situation. I don't have a phone. I got to run through grass this tall, like a mile to get back to the barn to, call for help. And so I'm like, crap, that's all I can do. So I turn to run. I hear an explosion, like look around, and the fire melted through the radiator hose, just like this big around. And radiator fluid exploded and put the fire out.
Wow.
Whoa. So I was like, holy shit.
That is probably one of the coolest his company's called Burning Tractor, and it's legit. He burned down his parents' tractor. So like, go check out that episode for the full story. But it makes, and when I think about Cinema Story, I'm like, man, we need to go burn something down or what?
Like we got to restart our origin story.
Anyways,
so sick, man.
I appreciate all the awesome guests. If they're watching this episode, thank you so much for being on the show. Joey, thank you for pioneering and hosting, putting the time in. Just so you know, a lot of the questions and research has been done by our intern, Bella, who's in the studio right now, switching cameras. So we appreciate all of the research and hard work that she's done. To the editors back at Cinema Story, man, I can't name them all. Michael, Andy, both Michaels. We're just thankful for everything that everybody pours into this podcast to make it is what it is. And then again, going back to the host, and then, you know, my business partner here, man, thanks again for forcing us to do this. You know, the vision, and I help you execute it. And it took a while to get it going, but you have been the lifeblood to make it happen. So let's go 2024. I cannot wait to see who is on the show next.
And with that, Season 1 of the Rough Cut Club officially comes to a wrap. That's it, my friend.
Bring it in. Oh, backwards.
Backwards.